businesses owned by people of color and women that, when the sun's shining and the wind's blowing at our backs, have bigger challenges accessing credit and accessing capital, and particularly in a crisis like this, we're just in a really, really challenging place. So since March, we've now supported, and it's good to see my friend and colleague and partner Al. He gets to talk in billions. We'll talk more in millions here about what we're doing, but we. Such as the lot in life of a state official versus a federal official. We've directly supported more than 21,000 small businesses throughout the state of New Jersey. And we've really tried to focus on folks and businesses who might not have had other programs that they could avail themselves of. So PPP had its challenges and complications, as Al described, but brought a lot of money to the table for a lot of small businesses, which was great. We really focused on the very smallest businesses. So if you look at our phase 2 grant program, which made awards of $1,000 per eligible employee up to 25 employees, capped at $10,000. The average award size was a little under $3,000, which means the average business size was 2.9 employees. So these were micro businesses, which again, many of them don't have a pre-existing banking relationship, which was one of the hurdles to PPP, or they don't have the kind of credit scores you would wish to take on emergency lending programs, even if they're bigger dollars. So we've really tried to focus our efforts again on those very smallest businesses.
So as I said, we have the two. I have a million questions, but I want to open it up, and so this is why we have this format. Is so ask away.
I have a question for Al and Tim. So where are small businesses at now? Are they still knocking on both of your doors for assistance? Have things stabilized? Maybe not for the restaurant industry as we head into winter. So, what are things like at this moment compared to the spring and summer?
For me, I wouldn't say it's stabilized. Obviously, the volume is way down. Like Tim said, those first few months, I was talking either with Tim or somebody on the NJEDA team almost daily. Right now, a lot of what we're doing is, so in addition to the PPP, obviously, we also had the disaster loans. And there's nothing, unfortunately, there's nothing I can do with disaster. I can't look them up. It's an entirely different division of the agency. So what we've been trying to do is help people get, that's right now the two biggest things for us now with folks that had these EIDL loans, the EIDL loans. Where are they? I mean, there's some that have been in the process and some have been trying to get reconsideration who got turned down. So that's a lot of who we're helping. And now the second phase is going into the forgiveness, which there's just recently they come out with forgiveness applications for the PPP loans for under 50,000, which should make it easier for a lot of folks. But from our standpoint, I'm not going to say it's nearly as busy as it was those first 2-3 months, but people are still looking. But people are also accessing our other programs. That's why I really want to see what our numbers are, because we can't. Agency, because of how everything was rolled out, the agency had to develop a whole different program to separate our regular 7A lending numbers from the PPP numbers. And that's what we're waiting to see. I can see altogether, but I can't see the separation, because obviously the PPP, I think our PPP loans, is more than we've done since the agency has been in existence, or at least since the district's been in existence, just over the last 6 months. So obviously it's a huge number, but from our standpoint, while I want to say it's slowed down, the folks that we're talking to have become a bit more desperate. And so we're doing what we can to try to help them, which can be frustrating for us.
Okay.
Yeah, my take is not dissimilar, although it's slightly different. It's a little bit different. So we're running, the governor, as I think Dale mentioned, the governor's announced some additional funding for small businesses last week. Governor and Senate President, Assembly Speaker, Lieutenant Governor, all announced $100 million of additional small business funding. 80 of that $100 million of stuff we're overseeing at the EDA. We opened pre-registration for that at 9 o'clock on Monday morning. We had a couple of technology hiccups, but As of 2 hours ago, when I got my last update, over 10,000 small businesses had pre-registered to apply for those grant programs. So that's plus or minus oversubscribed as we see already. So, and there's 5 full days left to go of pre-registration. So we're going to be way oversubscribed for that. So the need, the pain are very much still out there. I forget who the source of this data is. It's either the New York Fed's Small Business Pulse survey or somebody else's. It could be Dale. I'm copying his data. I don't know. It's one of the smart people that send me reports. The indicates, it's clearly not as bad for small business now as it was in April, May, June, when it was catastrophic. But most small businesses are reporting activity, or sort of the average activity level they're reporting in terms of sales is about 80% of what they would be expecting. That's not as bad as 20% or 0%, but 80% sucks. That is not a sustainable long-term number. And if you parse that by subsector, you'd probably see the restaurants obviously worse off than retail, with personal care somewhere in between, probably. And as they say on Game of Thrones, winter is coming, so some of those numbers are going to be challenged going forward. So we're not in any way, irrespective of the epidemiology and whatever's going on the public health side, the economic crisis is still going strong, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
Do you think that, and I wrote in an article, and I know I'm not a big believer in taxes and so on, but this idea of a pandemic equity tax, my life hasn't changed. I've been going to ShopRite and with my mask on since day one, Home Depot, Lowe's, in some ways they've been helped by the closing of other family small businesses. Is it, again, I don't expect you to comment because you guys can't comment about taxes without getting.
I was just going to tell you, I'm not saying anything about that.
I can't comment, but I say this to get back is that, almost have an equity tax where that money goes, supports, some of the money, Tim, that you need, those businesses that have stayed open because they're big. We've got to do something because we work with them every day. And Courtney's a big friend of ours, and she's as a major bus company, and she's been dealing with all sorts of headaches. So Courtney, I don't know if you have any questions for them. Not to put you on the spot.
You're on mute. Oh, there you go.
I'm just trying to get to unmute. Sorry. No. First of all, I want to congratulate everybody, all the nominees, honorees, and award winners. You guys are doing a great job. It's so good to hear somebody doing well and making a positive left turn out of this. And hats off to you for keeping your wits about you and being able to persevere. That says a lot about who you are, who your business is. And it's a testament when you see your employees work with you to get to a new goal. So bravo to you. I know that it's exhausting. Keep doing it. Keep getting exhausted. And thank you to everybody at the Fairleigh Dickinson Rothman Institute for Family Business for putting together this wonderful awards. And Dale, for having the Friday Zoom at noon specifically. It's been such a great way to reach out and hear what other companies are doing and how they're getting through. It's like a lifeline that you can get so focused operationally. I can anyway, and you forget what's happening outside the world and what's bigger than us. And thank you for really pulling us in and pulling us together with that. Absolutely. I think one of the big things on the table is November 3rd, which that's always a big question. And how will it impact our businesses either way? But specifically, one of the things that our industry is looking for is that CARES Act, the seals, and to see if it's actually going to happen or not. I guess there's one little roadblock in the way there. And, you talk to one person, they say, well, it'll definitely happen before the 3rd. And others will say, it'll definitely happen after the 3rd. So, you hear a lot of things from a lot of people, and whether there's assistance for our bus industry on a national level, I think will be the difference as to whether there'll be companies that are able to sustain this or not, because this is not an easy bounce back for the bus industry. This is a 2-3 year picture. So nothing that you guys can probably give into this at this moment, I understand, but that's just our perspective from the motor coach and school bus transportation world.
Yeah, so I can respond to that a little bit. Because I'm about to put the blame on somebody else besides the state, which is the feds are going to do something big.
It's a federal problem. It is.
It's a federal problem, right? So to do transportation. Someone asked in the chat about airplanes. whether it's the airlines, whether it's buses, whether the bus and coach industry, whether it's mass transit, we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars that are needed to get folks through the winter and the spring and into whenever I agree coordinate. This is a multi-year kind of recovery.
Yeah.
State of
And-
New
and
Jersey's
it's
budget.
a
State of New Jersey's budget is $40 billion to do everything we need to do, including pay the state workforce to process licenses at the DMV and stuff. So this is a federal caliber problem. It's going to require a federal caliber solution. That's not a partisan comment. That's just
Agreed.
doesn't matter who's down there. Someone's got to put a bill together that can pass.
Yes. If only that magic dust existed, right?
Now, from one of the things, and again, not because I'm on a couple of school boards and so on, and so I know the challenges that the smaller family bus companies have as opposed to the big ones. And one of the things, and both for Al, especially for the federal government, but for New Jersey, how do we treat, so often it's easy in government. I used to be deputy commissioner of Department of Community Affairs, so I know you sit at this level, and it's hard to understand that. Well, you say bus companies. Well, they're all bus companies. Well, we should treat them all the same. Well, not every bus company has, national or deep pockets. And so how do we, Al and Tim, how do we be equitable, but also fair to those small groups that don't have the deep pockets? Because those are who we work with, and those are our members. I mean, is there a way that you can see from where you sit that we can actually, in the same industry, treat them differently based on their size and how wealthy they are?
Well, my thought of this is kind of why federal money is given to the states the way it generally is, because it has to be a federal state partnership.
Right.
I mean, let's face it, what's facing New Jersey transportation is not what's facing Idaho transportation.
Right.
Right. So the question is, how much money will there be and how much money does each state get? Now, unfortunately, I gotta be careful what I say. So unfortunately, a lot of that is politically oriented, regardless of who's in charge.
Right.
But the only way to really get that equity is you got to have people on the ground. And I'll use the districts as an example. There are 68 districts across the country. And while many of us are similar, all of us have our unique issues and our unique problems, right? So we've driven, that's been made clear to our bosses in headquarters, and that's got to be done. And it generally is done in a much bigger picture at the federal level. It's really more how when they start doling out the money, how it's doled out, because everybody's going to want more than they're going to get, and what the state needs to do is really recognize those few folks that they can help the quickest, because like Courtney, not that, it would be that you should stand in line behind others, but, these small mom and pop transportation, where maybe they have, fewer buses, fewer trucks, fewer whatever, that are on the brink, you want to make sure that they get at least some kind of lifeline, while we're also helping the big ones stay viable, because the big ones are actually the ones that are keeping commerce going, not just in the state, but across states. So that would be, I don't see how it could work otherwise if you're looking at federal monies.
Yeah.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. There's a check and balances, and there's value to each different size of service in the spectrum and what they can provide and how they can contribute to the economy within the industry. Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. Tim, your thoughts?
Yeah, we've been trying to do, so we're talking about sort of big federal rescue packages. They're a different size than what I'm about to talk about, but even within the programs that we've been able to run, we've been trying to calibrate not an industry per se, but based on size of the firm. So we, in this current round of funding that we're running right now, that we're started running this phase 3 grants, $15 million is reserved for micro businesses, which we're calling businesses under 5 employees. So that's just for those firms. There's another $35 million that's just for restaurants, because we know we want to make sure we get money to restaurants, and if the luck of the draw, first come first serve, the restaurants didn't get there in time, that would not achieve our policy outcomes. So we're just ring fencing money by industry and by size, and then doing that somewhat purposefully. When you're designing big federal programs, it's harder to do that, but we have a little bit of the luxury of being a bit closer to the ground.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And I'll say, Tim already knows this because I said it early on. I think the state actually, as far as getting money out and managing what they've done, has done a tremendous job. and the fact that he's able to actually put that kind of money aside, because the bottom line is, it is those tiny businesses and the restaurants that need the most assistance, because they're also going to qualify for less even under the PPP. They're going to qualify for less under EIDL, and they're not going to have the wherewithal. And as one of the commenters said, folks are afraid to take on debt. And even though the PPP, if it's handled well, you're not going to take on debt, people were still afraid. And I think that's part of what went into the money being left over. People are still afraid of what they don't know. And there was a lot of confusion up front.
And just before we go, the Thomas Capone has a question. Are micro businesses recognized federally? Are they looked at the way that Tim's looking at them here in New Jersey as a whole separate category, Al, or not?
It depends what you mean by looked at. It's recognized that we have all sorts of different sized businesses.
Right.
Are there special set asides for them? No. It's when you're looking at a federal level with all these different states, it's really hard to do that. That's what Tim was touching on earlier.
Okay.
You can't, how am I going to say, what's a micro business in Jersey compared to a micro business in South Carolina?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's more difficult. Plus, so they recognize that there are different needs, but again, that's why, with the PPP, they did it by person, number of people employed in the entity, and that kind of thing. Because that, at a federal level, that's really about the only way you can really separate them in. And with the forgiveness platform, it's been evolving. And when I say forgiveness, obviously I'm talking about PPP. And they just came out with one. So for small businesses that got under $50,000, they have an even more streamlined process, because most of them are going to be micro businesses. Most of them are going to be the 1, 2, 3 person businesses. And so there was an easy form for sole proprietors, but in a lot of ways, this will be better for them. It asks less questions. And, but, again, we're the, what do you call it? We're not the scalpel, we're the axe.
That's
Or whatever. That's probably a bad analogy, but, we can't get to that kind of minutia.
So we often, we often have webinars where you have to send your questions, but we intentionally did this and kept it as a VIP group. So feel free to ask your questions. Some of you are putting in the chat box. Feel free. I see a couple of questions. Go ahead, please.
I had just a statement to Al about the money that's left over. I guess in addition to people having a fear of taking on debt, I found that at least in our community in Bergen County, it's sort of amazing when a catastrophe happens, as COVID has been a part of our lives. I found a lot of ethical behavior, people not wanting to take more than they had to. And since this is all driven by family business, I find that, the ethics and dedication associated with, family businesses when they give back to their communities, it was kind of amazing to me how many people, as opposed to the other extreme when people run rurally through times of catastrophes, I felt it was kind of impressive. I'd rather have my local favorite restaurant succeed and take a hit locally so that my family and I can enjoy our favorite places to go. So my question part is, with all of that money that's left over, what happens to that money that's left over for companies that aren't reaching out aggressively anymore?
Well, that's kind of the big question. It's supposed to be part of the next CARES Act, because that money, the one thing Congress did that was really good is it's very specifically targeted. So, Dale had said before, why can't we give it? Because actually the legislature targeted to aid small business, and it's very limited on what else it can be used for. So the idea is that if and when we have this next package, it will contribute to that package. So it can't be used as it sits right now unless Congress changes it. It can't be used for anything else. And to your comment, I agree with you wholeheartedly. We saw a lot of that. And I was even encouraging folks, I get what you're saying, but if you think you can use it and you can do it where you'll be fully forgiven, do it. But I agree with you wholeheartedly. We saw there's going to be a lot of press about, because there was a lot of fraud. There's going to be a lot of press about it. But I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think the vast majority of folks were ethical. and didn't want to press and I had said to me any number of times, I don't want to take money somebody else may need. So I agree with you 100%.
And we're going to play the video nationally so that people in other parts of the country hear that, Brad, that Jersey is honest. So it's nice to.
I don't know, Dale. You could get me in trouble.
It's what we're famous for.
Exactly. Other comments? I know Tom Capone had something. Alan, I don't know. Laura? Oh, you're on mute. No.
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think you had asked about the airline industry.
Yeah, I just, I was wondering how Tim was thinking about, monies going in, to support the airlines. I'm just trying to look to the future to understand, are you expecting travel to come back? I mean, how is that going to work? Or do you have any comment on it? Does anybody have any comment on that?
I have opinions. I wouldn't put a ton of stock into them. One, I think the feds have to do something for the airlines. I mean, it's just we can't not have it.
It's too big for the state.
You can't not have an airline industry in the country. It's just the economy won't function. On what terms, at what price, I'll leave that to others to figure out. I like when bailouts feel like equity investments. That always feels like a better deal to me. But I understand why the existing equity holders don't like that either. So I'll leave that to other people to negotiate. But look, I think this is again just personal musings. I think the travel industry is the business travel industry is one of the places where it's imaginable there's going to be kind of a permanent adjustment. I think what we're doing here on this platform right this very minute and using technology to do distant meetings is going to make a lot of CFOs and those who are business people or people who count the bottom line as an important thing they focus on, might discourage their teams from traveling quite as much as they used to do sales calls and conferences. Not zero. I don't think it goes to zero. This isn't a henny penny, the sky is falling. But I think if you're in sales and marketing, you're probably going to do, this is a hunch, 75% of the travel you used to do.
Right. So the
I
business.
think that's going to mean business travel. I think a lot of us are going to want to go on vacation for a while as soon as this damn thing is over. So, I'd buy, if you could buy stock in a 1 year window, people to go on lots of vacations, I would. And I think that'll be an offset to that. But so I think there'll be some adjustments. But again, that's just my personal musings. Don't attribute that to.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering about businesses that are in the airport and how what we see for the future for those small businesses and so on. So
so they're all eligible for our programs, and I know a lot of them have been coming into Al's programs as well. We're actually working with the Port Authority trying to figure out some solutions. There's some new contracts coming out to bid for the new terminal at Newark.
Right.
Absolutely. Tough time to be figuring out what life's going to be like in the terminal 3 years from now or 2 years from now when it opens, or whenever it's open, I forget the timeline. But we're working with the city of Newark and the city of Elizabeth trying to stand up some resources to help minority-owned local businesses get some of those slots at the airport, because those are obviously enormously valuable franchises to have.
Absolutely, especially if it's going to be profitable in the future. It's planning for the future that I think makes it a little bit difficult. So I just kind of wanted to get the lay of the land there. Thank you.
And I will tell, I had to fly to Missouri on Monday, and it was a pleasurable experience. It reminded me of 20 years ago that nobody sat next to me. It was safe, and the airports weren't too busy, and
so you drank your coffee.
Yeah, exactly. So they actually ended up giving more food, except in a plastic bag, than they used to before. So I would encourage people to travel as long as you wear your mask.
Right.
Other comments? Thomas, you had something. Thomas Capone, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for this wonderful session, by the way. My question is there a clearinghouse or a vehicle where surplus can be allocated? I mean, obviously, there's a lot of entities that are suffering, but there are some that are doing extremely well right now, telecom and technology companies. So I was just wondering, is there a vehicle or a mechanism to try to get the surplus, which would go to waste, into the hands of those who could obviously use it at this time? Is there anything like that?
What do you mean by surplus?
Excess capacity, technology is not being used. I mean, I'm in the telecom and technology space, and it's like, because some companies are being shut down, there's others that are thriving. and there's a surplus of assets and resources that are actually going to waste right now. I'm just wondering if that's something that could be addressed.
Not
Any
by me.
ideas?
So it's a great idea, but that would generally, that kind of stuff, and correct me if I'm wrong, folks, that kind of stuff generally is done at a much lower level, usually community, state, that kind of thing.
Got it.
But I mean, and it's usually not done by government, because whether it's state or federal, we generally are not going to run it quite as well as something else. We could be a part of it, we can help promote and stuff. But I don't know, Dale, have you heard of anything like that?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't. I mean, I think, we're in a new world now, and I think we're going to expose. I mean, everything has stopped now for the election, no matter who you're supporting. It's just, everything's just on hold. I think as soon as we get through that now, who knows how long it'll take to get through that.
My analogy would be like a food bank for telecom or technology. That's
Right.
my
Yeah.
concept.
I get it. It's a good concept, but I don't know of anything going on with it.
That's probably something that'll take off, actually. If you think about how the shared workspaces were really, expanding like crazy, not just in Brooklyn areas, but like in Jersey, in little small areas, like Frenchtown, New Jersey was having a cooperative development for individual businesses to have just a booth or seat, just a little space. So if you could offer that virtually to people, I mean, that's your left turn, huh? So that's awesome.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I also think that as much as people are marked and changed by experiences, we also have a very short memory. So even though personally my industry is going to be affected for the next 2 to 3 years, once we get into a new routine, a new habit, say that we all have this feeling of safety in spring, it'll be a new year. It'll be a whole new clean slate and a whole new opportunity for people to grow, and I think it'll be a rebirth movement.
Yep, I agree. I hope we're both right.
So Tim, and I've applauded Tim, and Tim mentioned it here. I mean, New Jersey has really been a leader in doing things in urban communities, doing things with veteran, minority, women businesses. Al, is there any focus on a national level to really carve out some of those things, or is it just the nationals just kind of letting each state do whatever they want to do on that basis?
So from SBA standpoint, we're always looking at the less served, the more minority communities as part of our outreach and part of what we do. Will it make a difference in the CARES Act? I can't tell you that, but we do our best to try to target those underserved communities. That's what the old hub zones were about, and that's what the new opportunity zones are about. So, along those lines, yes. But the bottom line is, and Tim had touched on this also before, we need to get money into the hands of the small businesses that have been having trouble getting it. And generally, the folks that have been having trouble getting it now are the same folks that have always had trouble getting financing. Underserved communities, disadvantaged communities. So that's who we try to target. But there also has to be the ability, depending on the program, to repay. That's one of the great things about the PPP program, was that if you did it properly, it turned out to be free money. So, which is why I really tried, if you can do this, if you can, qualify for the 60%, you're looking at free money, which SBA, this is the first time SBA has ever done this, other than the agency will give grants to the state, like New Jersey STEP grant, who also does an excellent job, by the way. And, but yeah, so from SBA standpoint, we're always targeting those communities. I can't talk to the rest of the federal government. We're just a little tiny part of the federal government.
Dale, as you well know, and know it with more expertise than I have, there are rules that would not be the way I would write the rules, that prohibits set asides for things like minority-owned businesses, federal funds. That's an oversimplification, but it's really hard to do it. Again, that would be how I would draw the rules, but I'm not a majority of Congress, the president, the Senate, so I don't get to make the rules. So,
Right.
well. We got pretty creative though, very consciously trying to achieve that goal when live within the bounds of the federal rules. And I'll just mention the Opportunity Zone program. The federal government was good enough to draw a map a few years ago, highlighting or centering on districts that are characterized by high unemployment, low income, high unemployment as these Opportunity Zone eligible census tracts. There's 750 of them in the state of New Jersey. It's a decent sized chunk of the state. That's not the same thing as a proxy for under-resourced businesses, but it's an existing map that we were able to use. So we reserved a third of the money for businesses located in Opportunity Zone census tracts as a pretty conscious way to try and direct funds to historically underserved businesses. And I'd like to do better than this, but we did pretty okay compared to the sort of statewide averages in how the money was distributed. So 20% of the phase 2 grant program that we did, 20% was awarded to minority-owned businesses, 24% to women-owned businesses. You can't add those up. That does not get you to 44%. Some of them are owned by women that are also minorities.
Right.
2% to veteran-owned businesses as well. So, not declaring mission accomplished or victory, but certainly better than a lot of the other programs that are out there. And I think we're the only state in the union that used the Opportunity Zone kind of overlay as a way to kind of achieve the outcome without running afoul of federal law.
Yeah.
And
which is brilliant, right?
the brilliant Ty Cooper, who
Yes.
let us speak well of her. That was her idea. So.
Yeah, it's and it makes perfect sense. And so, other questions, comments?
Yeah, I have a question for Al and Tim. You work with banks. There are EBA lenders. There are SBA lenders. How have they been during this pandemic in getting money out to the minority and women-owned businesses at this time? And do you monitor? Or how do you monitor, how they're making loans or where they're making loans or who they're giving loans to in this, crucial time?
I'll let you go first, Tim.
It's a great question. So we don't do bank supervision, nor does Al. So our colleagues at the Department of Banking and Insurance would have a finer grained point of view on who's been behaving best and honoring their things like Community Reinvestment Act obligations. Look, I'd say if folks got paid for good intentions and good words, it'd be a banner year. If you look at again, because some of those outdated or silly rules from the feds, a lot of the banks weren't even able to ask demographic data about who they were making PPP loans to. And it's worth noting I'm being a bit oversimplified. There's good reasons that actually protect the consumer for why those questions can't be asked as well. So it's a balance. But most of the publicly available data from the Federal Reserve and others, the New York Fed did a report. I want to say it was July or August. I forget exactly when. Basically saying, Black and Latino-owned businesses were underserved by the PPP program, at least in the New York Fed region, and that's probably indicative of the whole country. A lot of it had to do, again. Kudos to the Congress and to Al and his colleagues for standing up PPP overnight at a scale that no one has ever imagined. Relying on the banks as the mechanism of distribution had some positives, meaning they were a ready sales force and had lending channels set up and could push money out to people quickly. They prioritized as could have been expected, but as was disappointing, they prioritized their existing book of business. That existing book of business did not look like New Jersey, did not look like America. It looked disproportionately white, and so you got that outcome. There's been a number of banks that have stepped up in the last couple months, particularly in the wake of the reminders of the horrible existing societal record of injustice that things like George Floyd's murder reminded us of, a clanging gong of a reminder of injustice that exists all over the country and all over the state. There's a lot of indications of interest in doing something good. I haven't seen a lot of things you can deposit in the bank as a result of it. I'll get off my soapbox. I'll get off my soapbox for a minute.
Yeah, so like Tim said, we don't really we're not really supervisors of the bank. We can guilt them in sometimes, and we have certain tools that are very slow moving to use against what we consider to be really bad actors. It was 100% beginning of the PPP, yeah. I mean, the big banks were all ready to go. The smaller banks were not, and so it took a while. I think like I said earlier, as we got in more into the second half of the first round and then through the second round, we did better, but it's still, it still didn't really serve a lot of the underserved communities that we need to serve. I mean, it's just, it's hard to, I can't tell a bank what to do. That's what the bottom line is. I can't tell a bank and say, look, dude, you're here in corner X, surrounded by minority businesses. How come 80% of what you're submitting to me are non-minority businesses or non-disadvantaged businesses? Because you can be disadvantaged and not be a minority at the federal level. So I wish I had a better answer for you,
Yeah.
Anthony, but I don't.
Interesting. Thank you.
Other questions? All right, well, I have one, the big one, and I know you're not tax experts. I know we have some people that do have tax experts. Charles looks over here. So what are the tax implications? You're a business, you've taken this money, there's at one time it was definitely going to be forgiven. Some things are taxable, some things are not. And understanding you're not tax professionals, but what as you understand it, what's going on with that?
So at the federal level, Treasury just put out something that's supposed to affect your income. And because what folks were saying is, people taking this PPP money and now they're going to have to pay taxes on it. Well, as I understand it, and again, this could be incorrect. I am not a tax expert. I actually only just saw it the other day. But it's basically telling them that it shouldn't be used as a taxable base. So as far as I know, the forgiven part of the PPP, which originally folks were saying was going to count as taxable income, is not going to be, or at least some major portion of it is not going to be. My understanding, do not take that as gospel, but I know something just came out, but I'm not going to lie to you. The tax stuff gets me very confused.
Yeah. All of us. Tim, from a state tax standpoint, any?
Yeah, I haven't seen anything. I'm sure Treasury's being asked that question. Department of Taxation's been asking that question. I'm sure it is no one's intention at the governor, Senate, President, Speaker, Assembly Speaker level to make this a taxable item. That probably would require either executive order or something to effectuate that. But I can't imagine anyone would wish to make that a taxable moment for small businesses, because all it would do is diminish the amount of money that we're trying to get out the door. So I haven't seen anything formal, but I can't imagine that's anyone's intention.
Not to put my friend Charles Holmes on the spot, but Charles, you do a lot of financial work with small businesses. What are you finding out there? Give you a little play. You're on mute. Yeah.
Mute now?
No, you're off. Yep.
Well, everyone's scrambling. Like you guys said earlier, the restaurant industry is still being hit very hard. Everyone's looking at the news every night to find out when we're going to move from 25% of capacity to 55% to 25 to 75%. And people are living and dying. And a lot of what has to happen is with these businesses, everyone's got to hold hands. All of our suppliers want to get paid. And all of our customers want to delay being paid. So the business owner's right there in the middle trying to manage that cash flow. And it's really hard right now. So when the PPP loans came out and the EIDL loans came out, they were very helpful for businesses because, without those funds, some may not have made it to the point where people are opening back up. But the restaurant industry really needs Congress and needs everyone to get together and carve out some special funding for them because with winter coming and the outdoor seating being limited, we really need to have legislation that sort of handles each industry separately, just like you guys said with the bus industry. This is what we're going to have to do, but all the businesses are going to have to hold hands and walk through this together until we get through it.
Yeah.
I heard.
If I could
Go
just jump, okay, you know. I was just gonna say, I think one of the underappreciated sort of heroes of this crisis, at least so far, that has not gotten the attention it deserves is the Federal Reserve, because I think they've done a ton of things, and I think Charles, to your point, it's in no one's interest. Unlike 2008, in a lot of ways, this is a kind of economic crisis where it's in no one's interest to stop the music. It's not good for creditors to start to foreclose on people. It's not good for landlords to kick their tenants out, because who the hell are they going to get to replace them in a, you got a restaurant space and your restaurant goes kablooey. Who's going to step into that lease for the next 12 months? Nobody. So there's a huge aligned set of incentives around keeping the music going. And the Federal Reserve, when they stepped up in April and May and basically sort of pledged almost unlimited systemic support, which was 1,000% the right thing to do, I think sent the right signal, as did Congress with CARES, and obviously whatever comes next. Those are all, I think, strong indicators that, unlike 2008, when people were worried that the music was stopping, I think that's providing a little bit of cushion and psychic relief, if you will, and keeping people from making decisions that they don't want to have to make. Because as long as folks can hold off on giving back the keys on a lease, or having the landlord foreclose on, or kick them out, or a bank foreclose, everything gets worse. If those dominoes start to fall, everything gets worse.
Yeah. So Dale, I can actually give you a little bit of a paragraph of the thing for the tax part. When all or a portion of the stated principal amount of a covered loan is forgiven, an applicable entity is not required to, for federal income tax purposes only, and should not file a Form 1099-C information return with the IRS, or provide a payee statement to the eligible recipient, Section 6050P of the code, as a result of the qualifying forgiveness. I'm not saying I know what that means, but to me, it's basically saying that they don't have to report it as income.
Dale, I'm sorry, Al. I was just going to say, I'm sorry that Alan Sobel had to hop off. This would have been a great place for him to jump in and say, let me interpret that for you. Everyone should absolutely, I recommend highly that everyone calls their trusted advisor, their CPA. If it's us, that's great. If it's someone else, that's equally as great, because it is complicated. You're right, Al.
Yep.
It's really challenging. But there are people who understand it.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm not one of them.
Well, we are.
One of the other things I would say at a local level, and a lot of townships and folks are doing this, is especially for the restaurants, as there's certain codes that they have to follow. Like in New York, I saw they just put a moratorium on being able to use propane heaters, but being able to do a plastic enclosure on the street so they can expand, their serviceable area, that kind of thing. Those are also things that I think our local communities and our local districts or whatever need to take a look at, especially for our restaurants, because most restaurants are not operating with the big overhead. They have a big overhead then with a very narrow amount of profit. So, in the big cities, generally they got to turn over their tables 2 or 3 times a night at 100% capacity to make money. That hasn't been happening. So one of the things folks have got to look at is, while we're being creative, is the townships and the various taxing or oversight districts allowing things that they might not allow at a normal time. That's one of the things that has to be considered.
In my town, down in New Brunswick, on George Street, they've set the entire street open for restaurants. So that on both sides of the block, there are lots of restaurants, so they're open. One sad thing that I see is that there are other businesses on other streets where they're not afforded those same things. And it breaks my heart, no fault of anybody's. You're in a certain area, even in New York City, where you're afforded that space, and in other places you don't. And in past times you didn't need it, but there are winners and losers, and
Yeah,
No, you don't know.
yeah. It's heartbreaking, but there's only so much we can do.
Right, right.
Well, I had heard, I was going to quote and Tim answered that 91% of restaurants in New York couldn't pay their full lease last month. Had you heard that, Tim, or you? But it
Hadn't
was
seen that one, but holy hell, yeah.
Can't say it would surprise me.
No, yeah, but it's I mean, it's tragic. It's
I
really
mean, I know plenty that have gone under. I mean, seems every week, local restaurants been around for years and years is no longer around. So I mean, this is they are one of those areas that are very specifically affected, and because they're small employers, and it's tough. They got to turn over a lot of tables to make money.
to make money, exactly. Now I know Tim has a tight, so we have a few more minutes. You know, maybe about 10 or so. I guess one of the questions that I wanted to make sure we have, let me admit there's some people still coming in here, is what have you learned from this pandemic? What have you learned that you can tell small businesses need to do? Obviously, other than save more money. Tim, I'll start with you. What have you learned? From this process of small business?
Yeah, I could tell you some things we've learned about how to like run some government programs. Those aren't that interesting to most people unless you're inside of government. I would tell you one of the things I've been really impressed by and struck by, and obviously on my mind thinking about sort of family businesses in this call, the resiliency or resilience, or the right word is, and creativity and nimbleness, particularly of very small businesses, to figure it out and to make it work within ever shifting. And I understand the frustration with some of the shifting rules and all this stuff. I understand all those complaints. To figure it out, as Charles was saying before, folks who've been able to put tables in the middle of the street, great. Now they figured out how to do that. Folks that had learned how to do delivery, folks that get their e-commerce set up, it's been really impressive. The flip side of that, or the crummy side of that coin, is that lots of businesses don't have the resources and the expertise to make those kinds of pivots. We've seen that over and over again. Technology being the most glaring example of that. The valley, the gap, the gulf that exists between businesses that had their e-commerce situation, if not A+, but figured out pre-pandemic, were able to make that transition a lot more easily than a neighborhood restaurant that's been doing walk-in business since time immemorial, and it was going to be the grandkids who figured out how to finally put the menu online and do all this other stuff. Doesn't make anybody bad people, just how they were planning to run the business. In fact, not bad people at all, but they were that's how they were going to do it. And oh heck, I was going to use a stronger word. Oh heck, now we got to get online right now. We can't not do delivery. If you're a barbershop or a beauty parlor, you've been doing walk-in business forever, but now you got to do scheduling. You don't have a technology platform to do that.
Dale,
Really
if I may, a question.
Yeah, Barry. Yeah.
Okay. All right. More of a non-economic question for Al. Back in the day, SBA had management assistance officers that were not involved with lending, but actually in lending assistance to managing businesses. Do you still have a staff of people that are deployed to go out and do that?
No, we do that now through our small business development centers, our SCORE offices, and our women's business centers. And that was actually one of the things I was going to say to Dale's question is, when you're faced with these issues that you don't know how to handle, there's a lot of professional help, not just from SBA, the state has it, and there's local folks, but I mean, we have a pretty significant presence across the state with business advisors. And if you go to somebody, sometimes you don't, there's just not that connection. Well, you know what? There's somebody else you can go to that can help also. And that was probably one of the biggest things we see. We see it all the time anyway, but this just really magnified it. Don't wait till the water's up to your neck. When the water's at your ankles, that's when you need to go out. You got to start talking. Hey, look, and I'm seeing this may be a continuing problem. Don't get me wrong. Nobody could have planned for what's happened to us. Nobody could have planned for that, but when you see yourself getting in trouble and you haven't gotten your commerce up and you haven't gotten certain things in place that you've been putting off, you can go to our resource partners, our small business development centers, our SCORE offices, our women's business centers, and you can find them on sba.gov/NJ. and they may be able to help. You know, nobody's a miracle worker, but yeah, those days are long gone. That's when we used to have 30, 40 people in the district offices. Well, I'm understaffed right now, but I have 7. So that's all farmed out to the other guys.
Thanks, Al. And Tim, one of the, I think you've done so many effective things with the support of the governor, obviously, but I think one was giving money to the Veterans Chamber, the Hispanic Chamber, the African American Chamber to actually work directly with businesses to kind of help them with the process. That's the state's version of the SBDCs, I guess. You want to say something about that?
Yeah, again, the programs that Alan and his colleagues run are all well-meaning, and particularly the ones that were stood up in a flash here were great. But they can be, because they're federal programs, they have reasonably high barriers to entry, if you will. They're not uncomplicated to navigate. Ours aren't much better. We're a little more simple because we're state programs versus federal, but ours have their own hurdles. So yeah, we wanted to make sure, particularly, Governor Murphy's been talking about since the day he was sworn in and back through his campaign, building a stronger and fairer New Jersey economy. That means very purposefully making sure and doing everything we can that, historically, communities that have historically been ignored or worse in these processes are getting a fair shot at these resources. So yeah, we partnered directly with, as you said, the African American Chamber, the statewide Hispanic Chamber, and the Veterans Chamber to provide free technical assistance. Just you need your handheld applying for an SBA program, they'll do that for you. And I think we're over 1,000 businesses now that those three entities helped get through the SBA.
And just to be clear, Tim's talking about the lending programs, not our SBDCs or SCORE offices having.
100% right. Yeah, 100% right. Yes.
Just wanted to clarify.
100% right.
I am a SCORE advisor as well as have my own business consulting firm. And SCORE has reached out to an awful lot of people and offers a number of different programs. Their best value is to folks who want to start businesses. But when folks are already in business, they've already identified a whole bunch of issues that they have to address in order to keep in business. And that's where potentially the folks like myself can help established business advisors navigate this pandemic, because it's how do you redefine what you do and who does it with you.
Excellent. That's great. Great comment. Other questions before we go? We just have another couple minutes. Questions? So one of the things that I've said this a lot is that we're trying to get our family small business partners to really get to know their government, get to know their assembly people and their mayor and their council people, their banker, their accountant. And we find that so many of the smaller businesses, and the smaller they are, the less they basically have no relationship with a lot of key people that can influence them. And so, and Tim, I know you've seen this from the state level, that there are programs that you want, that if you had the support of people writing their legislature, that they would be very supportive of you to do some things that you've, with the governor's support, been able to do. And so are you seeing more of the advocacy on behalf of small businesses now, or is it just people are just struggling?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. I think there is a renewed and more stronger recognition that we've got to be doing more. Whatever level of support small businesses were receiving from a financial capital and a policy perspective prior, I think everyone knows that's got to go up quite a bit as we roll forward here. And I think that perspective has shifted. I think that's quasi-permanent. Nothing that we're permanent, but permanent. I think that's an enduring shift here. But there's also the sort of the chaos factor of there are so many problems when you have a global pandemic and your economy shut down right now. So it's a real crowded marketplace of advocacy right now, and understandably so, between schools and low income families and whatnot. So it's a big challenge.
The COVID machine. Well, we did it.
It's coming from, I don't think. But
Next Titone.
Oh, but
They calling me?
Mike, you want to
Yeah,
mute?
we can hear you. Can you mute?
No,
Sorry.
No worries.
don't worry about it. Funny, I can't see you. All right, just final words. I guess, Al, we'll start with you. Any final words you want to say, and then we'll just close it up.
Look, all I can say is try to stay on your feet. Think about different avenues for your business you may not have thought of before. I mean, that's kind of cliche, but whether it's exporting, getting more online. I mean, we're here to help as much as we can. Our SBDCs, our SCORE offices, our women's business centers are there to help you with any advice you can get. And, if you have a specific issue with a PPP loan or an idle loan, you can shoot us an email. Generally, emails are better than calls. You can try to call, but generally emails are going to get to us quicker than calls because we get bombarded with calls. So it takes time to get through them all. And we'll do our best for you. There's not a lot at the district level I can do to push it along, especially with the idle loans. We can't even see where they're at, but with the PPP loans, and you need some for forgiveness, we can sit with you. We can help explain that. We can steer you to online instructions, folks that are having seminars on it, that kind of thing. So as forgiveness goes along, because there's still a lot of banks, and I'm sorry, let me just do one thing. For those of you who have PPP loans and you're looking at forgiveness, it has to go through your lender. So don't send the district application forms, okay? Everything has to go through the lender. We can help advise you, we can help educate you and your lender, but the application for forgiveness goes to the lender, not the district. Because last thing, people should never be sending willy-nilly out their private information, which happened a lot during this, and I get why people get desperate. But even though it's a government system, doesn't mean it's 100% secure. So be careful where you send your private information. All this stuff needs to go through your lender, not the SBA.
Thank you, Al. Thank you. That's great, and appreciate it. Tim, any final words?
Stay tuned. Consistent with Al's point one, good luck to everybody, and continuing to fight through this terrible time and the headwinds that you all, in small business world, are facing. Stay tuned though on programs. So right now there's a grant program that we are running. If you're going to apply for our program, you got to pre-register between now and next Tuesday night. That's at CV as in coronavirus.business.nj.gov. If not you, tell your friends, tell your colleagues, tell folks in your business network. Up to 50 firms with up to 50 employees are eligible. There's that carve out for micro businesses, there's a carve out for restaurants. So that's real money on the table right now. And then stay tuned through the winter. We know we will have at least another $10 million loan program that'll roll out probably right after the first of the year. We got a USEDA gave the NJEDA a grant to run a loan program that we'll be doing. So stay tuned. We'll be doing more and more and more. And this will not be it. So please keep checking cv.business.nj.gov for all kinds of stuff as we roll here.
So say that website again. What's the website?
CV as in coronavirus.business.nj.gov. It's got all that's also a spot for where you can check out the latest, guidance documents on health regulations or when capacity levels change, plus or minus. All that information is there on an FAQs basis. We'll also in the next couple of weeks have a PPE purchasing platform that we're going to roll out for small businesses. It's going to look like an e-commerce website. It won't look like a state website, but it'll help small businesses buy PPE through the winter here.
Wonderful. And Al, you're SBA.gov?
SBA.gov/NJ.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you all. This has been a great day. And Al and Tim, thanks for your friendship and your support. And you're the best at what you do. So keep out there, and you're advocating for us. So we appreciate you. So
Thanks,
take care.
Dale.
Have a great afternoon.
Thanks,
Remember,
you too.
Family Business
Thanks
Week.
for having us.
Hi, family. Shop family.
Absolutely.
Shopfamily.org. Take care.
Take care, all.
Bye-bye.